Welcome back to the home workshop. This is where I work. Slightly different thing today. In the absence of the ability to work on my car very easily, I'm sort of doing lots of interior things and bits that I can 3D print. You've already seen on the last video my work on the rear number plate hinge. That's coming along nicely. I'm hoping to get that finished in the next week or so, though obviously half term and things like that will get in the way. But in the meantime, I've bought something else for the interior. The sound in my car is going to be quite important to me. This is going to be a sort of, luxury-ish vehicle, sports car, and so I want a good stereo in it. You may have seen on previous videos that I'm working on a double bin head unit conversion for the Z3 center console, which I'll share once that's done. But my car had a really basic stereo in it when it came. Not just the head unit, but the speakers. And one thing it was really lacking was bass. And then this came up on eBay the other day for just 30 quid, which is one of the subwoofer units from the Z3, which goes into the sort of the rear area where there's a sort of storage bin and stuff. So I snapped it up. I haven't fully worked out how it fits yet, but before I do, it needs some restoration. As you can probably tell, that speaker is toast, and I understand these speakers are pretty hard to get. So given there was only 30 quid and these sometimes go for lots of money, I thought I'd snap it up. The good news is the radiator at the back is in good shape. There's no damage there. And what I thought I would do is use my 3D scanner to scan this area down here. Oops, keep banging the microphone. It's a 3D scanner to scan this area and work out a way to 3D print something so that I can fit pretty much any standard speaker of that size. I know people have used standoffs of MDF and various other things before, but I figure actually a bit of PLA or PETG would be a really good alternative, given that the rest of the thing is made from plastic anyway. So that's this project. Scan that in, design something in CAD, print it, and then see if I've got a speaker that fits. I've got a few speakers that might do the job. If not, buy something appropriate and wire it all up. There we go. Right, first things first. Let's get this speaker out. Really do need to give my little Makita set a clean up. That's the right bit. It's all got a little bit rusty with all the water that's pouring into the workshop. One, two. Yeah, my magnetic screw pot was around somewhere. Three. Let's see if we can pull this out. There we go. Look at the size of the cables on that. That's pretty meaty. Oh, nasty wrapper's degraded a bit. But other than that, I thought this thing had an amp in it, it was so heavy. But actually, it was just the weight of that coil. So we've now got a plastic box with a radiator on it, which may not seem like a lot for 30 quid, but it's a hell of a lot of time saved in trying to replicate it and make my own. So let's do some research, see if we can find a replacement speaker before we start setting about designing anything to fit an alternative. So a little bit of discovery. What we can see is that it's actually dual wired. There's two coils there, or rather two sets of wires to the coil, one or the other. I'm no speakerologist, as Gavin would say. But we do have some, well, they're like part numbers on the back here that we can go and Google. And actually there's been some discussion of replacing this speaker on the Z Roadster forum. It's clearly got some heft to it, so it's not just like finding any speaker of those dimensions to fit in there. You want something that's got good travel, can have good bass extension, so it's going to drive that passive radiator as well. Bit of googling around shows me that I'm certainly not the first person to have this failure mode on the subwoofer. This guy on the Z Roadster forums had exactly the same thing, if you ignore the glue and masking tape that's been used in a fairly terrible attempt to repair the one on my unit. So very similar. What it also shows is that it's pretty much impossible to get a direct replacement. They don't seem to exist, certainly not with the same shape to surround. And so what I'm looking at is something like this, very, very cheap and cheerful option. What you'll notice is a couple of things. It's not a 2x2 ohm unit, it's a 4 ohm unit. Finding a 2x2 ohm unit in a 5-inch package or 113mm package seems to be nearly impossible, or at least extremely expensive. So a 4 ohm replacement should be absolutely fine for my purposes. So single 7-inch point, so we'll wire it differently. I'm not going to be using the standard BMW amp because I don't have one. So I may try and find one of the sort of Harman Kardon amps that went into the Z3. I may just put in an aftermarket package. None of this is trying to be super original with it, given that the whole car is a complete Frankenstein's monster. So for the sake of 11 quid, I think I'll pick one of these up. And when that arrives, I can sort of map this to the opening of the subwoofer surround and make something that fits. So I'm all set up for scanning over here. I'm probably going to scan the aperture. I might try scanning the speaker as well, but I think it's probably easiest just to scan this. I've given the area a dusting of dry shampoo, which works pretty well, I've found, to improve the ability of the scanner to pick things up. I'm using a Creality Scan Lizard with a 3D printed handle for hand scanning. You can use it on the tripod as well with the turntable here for smaller items. You can see I've just scribed some lines on the turntable so that the it's also given dry shampoo. Honestly, that is dry shampoo. It's nothing dodgy. Just some lines so it helps the scanner distinguish between what's on there and the thing I'm trying to scan, or the base rather. So I don't have enough hands to do all this in one go. I'll do a few passes with this scanner and show you the result on CR Studio when it's done. So I've jumped over to my desktop PC, so it's easier to show this to you. That's the sort of, well, I don't know what it's called, geometric scan of the aperture. You can see it's actually seeing right inside the case. If we then select remove noises to clear this up and hit process, should run nice and quickly on this very powerful machine. Let's export that. I've actually already exported it. And what you can see there is a nice clean scan of the aperture. You zoom in, we can see pretty much the holes we're going in. We've got our dimensions, might need a little bit of cleaning up, but we've got the dimensions for our aperture. So we can now import this into Fusion and design a sort of surround that goes in here. Now what I don't know, because I've never tried fitting this into the car before, whether the speaker needs to be completely flush. But let's see if we can get a schematic drawing of the new speaker and create a rough sketch of that, put it inside this and see what an adapter plate might look like. So here we are in Fusion. I've transferred the model across. I've done a bit of cleanup using the direct editing in the mesh, and then selecting by triangles and taking out all the stuff in the background. And then I've moved the model around as well till it's vaguely flat on, so it's face on to the front. It's not perfect. You see there's a little bit of angle in it still, but it's
near as damn it, it'll do. So what we can now do is start to draw on top of it. So if I construct an offset plane that brings us to, that'll do, about there. I could just move this back to the center plane, of course. Do a new component, and let's call it surround, and then select our new plane and create a sketch. And yeah, just start to draw basically. There we go. So I don't have the bolt pattern, screw pattern for the new speaker yet. But if I remove the surround, or rather remove the box, you can see what we've got there. So 4 recessed screw holes, which should align with the holes in the body. I've taken some measurements to try to confirm that. Likewise with the rest of this, I've taken some measurements to make sure that my scan is accurate. A 130mm hole in the middle, which should allow our speaker to sit in there. And so once we've got the speaker, I can drop it into the scanner, or just take some measurements, work out where the holes need to be, and work out how that's going to fix. And that should sit nicely, fingers crossed, and give us a good seal as well. I can always put a bead of sealant around it to make sure that it seals up against the case. But yeah, bulk of the work done, I think. You never know until you test these things.
Ah, how wrong past me was. So everything you've just seen was shot a few months ago, before work went nuts and everything else. But probably January-ish, January, February. Anyway, since then a few things have happened. I have been through about 5 different redesigns of the cowling for this. The speaker I bought obviously arrived, a Pile Gear X. Did a lot more CAD work, a lot of which I didn't capture, I'm afraid. But ended up with this very nice, simple design. So rather than a single piece, which ended up being very thin around here and kept cracking, I've actually gone for 4 individual pieces, which just clamp around the outside. I've still got to seal the space behind where the cables go through, so I'll put the cables in and probably add some silicone. I don't think it's worth printing a piece to go in there, although a little cap might look nice to smooth it all out. I've had to swap the original screws out for slightly longer ones, but actually I had some about 3mm wood screws that were absolutely perfect, and then it had to be fractionally longer just so that they really bit. And it seems to be held in really, really tightly. I might need to put a gasket underneath to make sure there's no sort of farting air escaping out from around the outside. But by and large, pretty happy with it. Some questions about how it needs to be wired up. Given the passive radiator, you probably want it going in rather than out. But we shall see. It'll work in both ways, and the relative quality of the sound system, I mean, it's going to be an improvement. Is it going to be perfect? Maybe not. We shall see. We'll see how anal I get, basically. Clearly need to clean it all up. It's still got a lot of the fish food dry shampoo from scanning, so I'll take it all apart, clean it all up before I do a final assembly. And yeah, I've also bought, if I can find it, a rather cheap AliExpress amplifier module. I'll need to put this in a case, something that probably exposes that heatsink or has some fans in it. But buying this rather than a cheap complete amp which I suspect, although it would be neat and easy to install, but I suspect a cheap one has basically the same circuitry in it. I mean, we shall see. This could be a complete waste, but it was about, I don't know, it was about 12 quid or something. So we'll see whether that works, because then I can use this to drive this subwoofer and any other extras. I can bridge this. I think it's a 4-channel amp. So yeah, so I can drive a variety of stuff off this. We shall see how well it works. It's just an experiment. It was a relatively cheap experiment. So yeah, refocus, thank you. Apologies for missing some of the process, but at least you saw me do some 3D scanning and some CAD. So yeah, you saw how I did it. It just improved. What you may be able to tell from the texture on here, and I don't know whether you'll see which video you'll see first, is that I have upgraded my 3D printer. But yeah, you may just about be able to see the brand of it in the background. But that'll be a separate video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe. Bye bye.